To our presentation with the Bureau of Land Management today. We'll be getting started in just a few moments, given just a few more minutes here, a minute or so, for everyone to log in. Thank you for being here, and thank you for attending UAGC. All right, welcome everyone to today's information session with the Bureau of Land Management, also known as BLM. My name is Warner Petzold. I'm an employer outreach specialist at the University of Arizona Global Campus Career Services, and I'm a 10-year U.S. Air Force veteran. We're excited you could join us today to learn about the exciting career opportunities with the BLM. Before I turn the floor over to the BLM representatives, I want to go ahead and cover a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded for all of those who registered for today's information session. The recording will be emailed to you in a few days. We will take time to answer as many questions as possible during and at the end of the presentation. At the bottom of the screen is a Q&A button. You can submit questions with your name or anonymously to be answered live. We will do our best to get to as many questions as we can. However, if your question is not answered by the end of the presentation, you can email it to career services, that's all one word, no spaces, dots, or anything in between, at uagc.edu. We will follow up with the BLM to get any remaining questions answered. Also, feel free to engage in the chat. You can pose questions in the chat, and the members of the Career Services team will be available to help answer questions throughout the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties, we recommend logging out of Zoom and logging back in. Now, I would like to introduce our guest employer. Joining us today is Milo Espinoza Davis, Steve David, and Crystal Small at the BLM. And I also want to mention that Steve David is an alum of UAGC, formerly Ashford University. So we appreciate all three of you being here today. So let me tell you a little bit about each one of them. Milo Espinoza Davis is a human resources specialist for the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, of course. Milo grew up in southern Idaho in a small town of Buell, which is the rainbow trout capital of the world. Growing up in Idaho afforded Milo opportunities to explore, create, and utilize the vast number of public lands. Fishing, hunting, camping, and outdoor recreation were commonplace growing up, and a career carrying the land he loved was always in the cards for Milo. Getting money for higher education was also a priority for Milo, as his parents could not afford to send him to college. Milo decided to join the Air Force, go Air Force, hoping to serve 4 years, see the world, and obtain the GI Bill. 25 years later, as Milo's military career was ending, he decided to look at careers that would allow him to pursue a passion for managing and conserving public lands for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. Shortly after military retirement in June 2022, Milo was hired as Human Resources Specialist with the Bureau of Land Management, a newly created role that allows him to communicate his passion in managing our lands for a broad range of uses, including outdoor recreation, mineral development, and energy production, and the conservation of natural, historical, and cultural resources. Steve David is a human resources specialist with the Bureau of Land Management, where he applies his 16+ years of experience and passion for recruiting and retaining top talent for their noble mission. As a recruitment and placement expert, Steve designs and implements cutting-edge strategies that attract and hire exceptional candidates from diverse backgrounds and communities for the optimal use and conservation of over 245 million acres of public land. As diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility and talent acquisition leader Steve led and managed teams of 10+ acquisition professionals, oversaw budgets, streamlined organizations, and elevated customer service standards. Steve has comprehensive knowledge of state and federal regulations, appointing authorities, and innovative marketing and advertising techniques, has empowered Steve to source and hire exceptional candidates from diverse backgrounds and communities, while simultaneously providing invaluable guidance and counseling to senior leaders and employees on a broad range of human resource matters, including benefits, grievances, staffing, and retention. Steve is deeply committed to enhance the performance and well-being of the BLM exceptional workforce and creating a legacy that preserves and cherishes the land we hold dear. Crystal Shaw's passion lies in connecting people to opportunity. With over 2 decades of experience, Crystal has supported students and job seekers alike in achieving academic and career success. Her diverse background encompasses recruitment, college admissions, and career advising. Outside of work, Crystal cherishes time with her family and loves exploring new destinations. Growing up with a father who is an Air Force chaplain allowed her to travel extensively, fostering a deep appreciation for different cultures and a lot of love for all people. Crystal is a proud graduate of the University of Alaska, Anchorage, holding a bachelor's degree of arts in English. Milo, Steve, and Crystal, we are excited to hear your presentation and thank you for joining us today. I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Can I get a thumbs up from anyone who can hear me? All right, perfect. Well, I'm going to share my screen real quick so everybody can see it. Let's take a look here. Can you verify that it showed up? Good to go. Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everybody. Like Werner said, my name is Milo Espinosa Davis, and I am a human resources specialist recruiter with the Bureau of Land Management. I am located here in Boise, Idaho, but Idaho handles BLM Idaho handles all of the human resources, staffing, placement, and recruiting for not only Idaho, but we actually handle all of it for Arizona as well. A little bit about me. I've been married for 25, almost 26 years to my beautiful wife, high school sweetheart. We have 2 boys. We have a 15-year-old and almost 13-year-old. We have a Chihuahua Jack Russell mix. We actually did the DNA test on him, named Jackie. I graduated from Boise State University with a degree in business administration, HR. So anyone who is a University of Arizona football fan, sorry for the beat down a couple years ago in the Fiesta Bowl. Just kidding. So my familiarization with the BLM started at a very young age. My great-grandfather actually emigrated from the United States from Mexico. And his job was actually as a horse wrangler. More specifically, his job and his brother's job, they were horsemen where they grew up. They actually broke horses, and they broke horses for about a nickel a horse. My great-grandfather traveled throughout the western half of the United States, breaking wild horses for a nickel horse, and he ended up saving up enough money to become one of the largest grape growers in the state of California, right there in the Central Valley, in the Easton, Clovis, Fresno area. So it's a really cool story. That's my connection to the BLM, because BLM actually handles all the wild horse and burros with the Forest Service, but we handle the majority of that program across the United States. I'm a 25-year Air Force veteran. Like Werner said, go Air Force. My phone number is listed on this site, on this screen. My email address is listed on this screen as well. I'm going to keep it up for just a couple of seconds. And my LinkedIn account is listed on this screen. So any way you would like to connect with me after this conversation is over, you can reach me LinkedIn, you can reach me via email, you can reach me via phone or text message, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have offline. So with that, I'll pass the baton over to Steve.
I'm Steve David. As it says, I work also for the Bureau of Land Management. I'm a human resource specialist in recruiting. I'm a single father. I have 2 daughters that are 20 and 16. They keep me very, very busy. I'm also in Ashford University I'm part of the alumni. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so let's go U of M. Just have to say that. I love riding motorcycles and fast cars. I have a '57 Chevy, a motorcycle. I have a Dodge Charger. So again, I just like fast machines. So I have to go to the gym because again, I have two beautiful daughters, so I have to keep these boys on their toes, as you can only assume. And I'm also a 25-year Air Force veteran. There is my phone number as well. There's my email and my LinkedIn. If you guys ever want to contact me. And I'm also a representative of Eastern states, pretty much all the way from Minnesota all the way down to Louisiana and then east of the United States. So that is me in a nutshell. Contact me if you ever want. I'd love to chat. I'll pass the baton over to Crystal.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Sma, and I'm talking to a clientele, a population of students. And my background is working with students. I worked for the University of Alaska Anchorage recruiting students and Texas A&M University. I am from Alaska. I am the BLM recruiter for Alaska. Unlike Milo, I didn't know, I grew up in Alaska and didn't know about BLM. And what I find is when doing this job is a lot of people don't know about the Bureau of Land Management in Alaska. And so I love connecting people to opportunity. And so being able to go out in the community, to go to the high school I went to, the colleges I went to, and talk to people about the opportunity of working for the Bureau of Land Management and federal employment, it's something I truly enjoy. I've been married for 22 years. I married my high school sweetheart. We met in Alaska in high school. We have 3 children. I have a son that is in college. He attends Tuskegee University in Alabama. And then I have a son that's a junior and a daughter that is in 7th grade. I enjoy connecting people to opportunity through recruitment and retention. My dad was an Air Force chaplain, and that enabled me to travel around the world. We lived in Germany, and I was able to go to Korea and Japan. So I really enjoyed that. And just getting to meet people from different cultures really broadened my life experiences. Working for the Bureau of Land Management has been a complete joy. I'm talking to people, making sure that the land is there for generations to come to enjoy. So I'm happy to be here, happy to talk with you all. And I hope you will, that when the time comes, consider a career with us. So thank you very much.
Awesome, Crystal. Greatly appreciate it. One of the things, and Crystal mentioned it, when we go out and we talk to folks about the Bureau of Land Management, oftentimes, obviously, the further west we go, the more commonplace Bureau of Land Management is. But when we travel out east, as you can see on the map right there, there's not a huge presence of BLM land. And I can get into a historical conversation about that. I won't bore you with all those details, but the further west you go, the more you're going to see the Bureau of Land Management. What's crazy is when I go to Texas, most people are like, what is public land? I have no concept of like what public land is. They know about the Park Service, they know about Fish and Game, but they're not really sure what public land is. So I'll give you kind of an overview of who we are and what we do. The Bureau of Land Management, we fall under the Department of Interior. So the same as the National Park Service, the same as Bureau of Reclamation, the same as Bureau of Indian Affairs, the same as U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We employ over 10,000 employees across the United States. And these 10,000 employees can be anything from permanent individuals, temporary individuals that are on temporary details, and or seasonal positions, which you'll see with a lot of our wildland firefighters when fire season rolls around. Our footprint really lands across the 12 Western states. Most of the lands, as stated before, they're primarily going to be in the West, but we do have a small presence in the East. And as Steve can probably attest to, with the more wetland restoration projects that we have coming down the pike due to the Inflation Reduction Act and energy production that's taking place out East, you're going to see more and more of a footprint out East. Probably it's never going to look like what it looks like out West, but you're going to start seeing a larger smattering of BLM out East. Our organizational structure is we have a headquarters office. That headquarters office has actually been kind of volleyed between a couple of different places. It's currently in Washington, D.C., Prior to that, it was in Grand Junction, Colorado. And then prior to that, it was in Washington, D.C. So it depends on the administration. Obviously, whoever's in charge, they can kind of dictate where they would like headquarters to be. But currently, right now, the Bureau of Land Management is right down the street from Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. Each of those states that I mentioned, we have state offices, which are typically going to be your state headquarters. That's where I work out of. Crystal, I believe you work out of a state headquarters as well. And Steve works out of the Eastern States headquarters out of Falls Church, Virginia. When you have these state offices, underneath the state offices, you're going to have these district offices, which typically are going to employ anywhere from 75 to 150 individuals. And then you're going to have your field offices. And these field offices can be anywhere from 75 people or less. And oftentimes those field offices can be in the middle of nowhere. So if you're driving through the desert, or you're driving through really anywhere on public lands, you could see, a small little information center or a visitor center, or you might even see a ranger shack or something along those lines. Those are going to be our field offices. And there's actually BLM individuals that are working out there. We also have 3 centers that we're kind of in charge of. One of them is the National Operations Center out of Denver, Colorado. They handle most of our IT. We also have the National Training Center, which is in Phoenix, Arizona. And we also have NIFC, which is the National Interagency Fire Center, which is headquarters for all of Department of Interior fire programs. And that's actually headquartered out of Boise, Idaho. So if you're ever flying in and out of the Boise airport, you'll see a large area that's the National Interagency Fire Center. So wherever wildland fires are across the United States, that's the hub of all wildland fire activity. So that's a little bit about who we are, where we are, and what we do. Let me pass it on to Steve now for the next slide. I think you're on mute, Steve.
Sorry about that, brother. So what is our overall mission? To sustain and help the health of and diversity of productivity of public lands for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. So what does that mean? If you look at the BLM as a whole, we manage 1 in every 10 acres of land in the United States, and approximately 30% of the nation's minerals. So if you look at that throughout the entire nation, it's 247.3 million acres. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a discussion with somebody, and every time I bring that up, I am still blown away by the fact of how much public lands that we are able to manage. But we also, BLM works with livestock operators, recreationalists, utility companies, nonprofit organizations, and state and local government. So a lot of the places that you don't think the Bureau of Land Management is, we're very present there. Let's go on next slide.
And Crystal was kind of a late addition to this call. I'm so happy that you're here, Crystal. Do you want to hop on this slide right here, or do you just want me to continue rolling with it?
I can go. So
Okay.
5 of our priorities are 1, clean energy. Making sure we're leading the way and making sure that our energy is clean for future, leaving the communities clean so that we all can utilize them for generations to come. And then you see restoration, making sure that the nature is our planet's best engineer. So a lot of our careers focus on that. And then we have recreation for all. This is what I think a lot of people know about BLM is being able to enjoy the public lands for camping. I know here in Alaska, we have different centers and different cabins that have been built for people to go out in the summertime and be able to stay in those cabins, those dry cabins, and be able to enjoy the land. And then conservation, as Milo was talking about earlier, we have the wild horse burrow, making sure that we are making sure those animals are taken care of, that people, there's no hunting going on, that people aren't, trying to, get them, kill them or anything, just making sure that's going good. And then rebuilding the agency. We're really focused on letting people know about BLM, making sure that college students such as yourselves know about the agency and opportunities. So these are our 5 key priorities that we really focus on within the agency.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. One of the things that Crystal hit on is branding the agency. And we're actually part of a brand new team with the Bureau of Land Management. The Bureau of Land Management has never had recruiters. And so oftentimes we'll go out and speak to people and they're like, I had no idea that the BLM was even hiring. I had no idea what you guys do. And really what we're looking for is one of the main reasons the BLM hired recruiters to go out and brand the agency is because we really want to diversify and tap into some of these underrepresented communities that really have never thought about a career with the Bureau of Land Management or Department of Interior. We want to make sure that individual differences are recognized, because if we continue to just have one simple train of thought on who we are, what we do, what the mission is, how we get things done, blah, 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 we're really not taking in new ideas. And for us to change the agency, it's going to take brand new individuals, young, fresh talent, mid-level talent. I mean, you name it, talent from across the United States, but individuals from a diverse and inclusive environment is really who we're looking to tap into.
Speaking of that, we have some amazing career opportunities for the Bureau of Land Management that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that we have available for the public or for veterans in many different hiring paths. So as you see, we have biological sciences, which, I mean, everything is the Bureau of Land Management. So you have fisheries biologists, forester, natural resource specialists, rangeland specialists. You have business and administration services, obviously, just as what we fall under in human resources. There's IT, public affairs, realty and planning. We have cadastral survey and land conveyance to geological science. Fire and aviation is a huge career field within the Bureau of Land Management. You'd be surprised that a lot of the competition between the Department of Department of Forest Services and the Bureau of Land Management. A lot of entities get us, a little bit mixed up, but that's fine. So we have aviation managers, dispatcher, fire management officer, fire specialists. A lot of the stuff is going to be interchangeable with a lot of your military and veterans, because they hold the same different what we in the Air Force we call AFSCs, or in the Army they have MOSs. So you have engineering, law enforcement and safety, and social sciences. And what's great is there's even a couple of steps further where we can talk about students and graduate opportunities. And as a matter of fact, I think I need to pass it over to Crystal with that one.
Yes, so we have our student and graduate opportunities. We have an internship program. This year across BLM, we hired 100 interns. Those positions came available in December and they ran for a month, and those are on USA Jobs. USA Jobs also has a student internship portal where students can apply for jobs. So this is a good way to get your foot if you're interested in working for the federal government. In addition to that program, for the internship program, you need to be a student in school, and typically you need about 30 credit hours and being active in school. Then we have our recent graduate program. We're actually doing a big hiring for this coming up. I know in Alaska and in Idaho and across the US, several positions have come up for students who have recently graduated. It's a one-year training program for students who have graduated like within the past 2 years. So that's a way you can get employment. And then we have the President Management Fellows Program. This is a 2-year on-the-job training where after you graduate that you can enter in this program. I know our state director in Alaska was a part of this program, and also another a staff member. Something else, a lot of students, the Public Land Corps. I know a lot of a lot of students in the Student Conservation Association. And this is an opportunity for young adults 16 through 25 to work on conservation projects on public land. And all these different ways, these 4 ways, these are ways where a lot of people end up starting their career within the federal government. I know a lot of people, it used to be called the SCEP program, Student Career Employment Program with the federal government. I know a lot of people when I was in college that went through that program. That's now our new internship or pathway program. And then last but not least is the DOI Secretarial Direct Hire Authority for the Resources Internship Program. And that's an 11-week program. It's an internship that's pretty rigorous that that department leads, hiring managers sign up for through BLM to host students to go through this program that work with minority serving institutions, veterans and women and individuals with disabilities to help them get their foot in the federal door. So there's many paths to get into the federal government, and these are just some of them.
Absolutely. And if I can just hit on something real quick, three quick things. Our state human resource officer, who is in charge of all human resources for Idaho and Arizona, he started out as a SCEP or a pathways way back in the day while he was at Boise State University. And he started out as a, if any of you know the GS system in the federal government, he started out as a GS3 and he's worked his way up. He's been with the feds now for about 20 years and he's a GS14. So these stories are real. For those of you that are parents, also keep in mind and keep into consideration that if you have individuals, your sons or your daughters or your grandsons or your granddaughters, if they're going to school, whether they're in high school, whether they're in college, have them take a look at these internship programs. And I would even go as far as to say, not just look at it. I mean, obviously look at it from the BLM standpoint, we're always hiring, but look at it from other agencies that they might have an interest in, whether it's NASA, whether it's Homeland Security. There's all these different agencies. And these are great ways for younger individuals, that talent that we're looking for to get their foot in the door. And for you veterans out there, these programs, specifically the recent graduate programs, they typically last 2 years from the time you graduate for a student. But if you're a veteran, you can actually be 6 years from the date of graduation, you can still apply for these recent graduate programs. So obviously keep that into consideration, just something to think about. As we try to attract young talent, we're always talking about the competitive benefits. I know when I was younger, medical, dental, vision, I remember telling my military recruiter, like, oh no, I don't need to worry about medical. I don't need to worry about dental. I'm completely fine. Life insurance, I don't need that. I'm 19 years old. But when you start getting a little bit older, obviously we really take that into consideration. So we have the federal medical program, which is FEBS, and this consists of medical benefits, great medical benefits, amazing dental and vision benefits. There's a flexible spending account that you can qualify for if you work for the federal government. You have very low cost life insurance. You have long-term care insurance. You can go into the thrift savings program, which is an amazing program. It's essentially a investment program. For those of you that may be veterans, you may know about it, but it's a great way to manage your investments through the federal government at a very, very small fraction of a cost of what other agencies might charge. You have plenty of time for vacations, sick leave, family care. The work-life balance is phenomenal. And then you can qualify for the FERS, which is the Federal Employees Retirement System. Won't get into details on the mathematics of that, but it's a very competitive retirement program once you get your foot in the door to the federal government. So if you're interested in benefits, along with work-life balance and all those other things, federal government's a great place for you, specifically the BLM.
So how would you join the Bureau of Land Management team? So we have a one-stop shop with USA Jobs. Every single job that you want to apply for the Bureau of Land Management has to go through USA Jobs. I cannot foot stomp the importance of anyone who's interested in applying for any position within the Bureau of Land Management to really get yourself more associated with USA Jobs, with building your profile. Your profile is going to be your one-stop to where the Bureau of Land Management is going to scour all of your documents. This is where you have to enter all of your qualifying documents, whether it's your resume, your DD-214, anything that you go ahead and you select the different hiring paths of what you think that you qualify for is going to come directly out of USA Jobs. So again, I cannot put stop hard enough to make sure that your USA Jobs profile is up to date, looks good, and has some substantial information in there. So if you don't know how to do that, the number one thing you do is you need to create a USA Jobs profile. With the profile, you can save jobs, automate job searches, manage everything you need to complete your application, and includes resume and required documents. There's some great benefits with using USA Jobs. There is a resume creator, and that will help you in a lot of ways of when you're trying to apply for jobs. I could get into some resume specifics, but it's kind of difficult to do so. We maybe be able to answer some questions a little later. But number two is you can do a specific search for Bureau of Land Management positions throughout the entire United States. It's best to sign into your profile before searching. And you can also use filters according to wherever you're located, so on and so forth, or wherever it is that you potentially could be wanting to move to. I know there's going to be a lot of questions regarding remote positions, so we can save those for later. But again, utilize USA Jobs to the fullest extent. I cannot tell you how important it is, because this is your face. This is the exact representation of what you're showing. Don't leave anything ambiguous. Try to get as much information and as much documentation that's relevant to the position that you want to qualify for, and put it in there, and make sure that it's up to date. So next slide.
So you want to make sure, going on with Steve, you want to make sure you review the job announcement. Make sure that you're reading the entire announcement, because it tells you in there what they're looking for, what you need to do to qualify, and make sure you're eligible to meet the qualifications. We'll go on in another slide where we'll talk about hiring paths. We'll go over that in a minute to know if you're eligible to even apply for the position. And then when you're preparing it, make sure you read the how to apply. They'll tell you what you need. Do you need transcripts? If you were military, do you need a DD-214? Make sure you're completing all the information so you know how to apply. And I can't reiterate how important it is to actually use the resume builder in USA Jobs. I know in our department, there were, we put out a job announcement, and we had BLM employees apply for the job, and they just uploaded a resume they had. And then we had outside people put in their job and apply for the job, and they used the resume builder. Well, none of the BLM people qualified even got referred to the hiring manager, because the resume builder prompts you to put different information in there. On most non-government jobs, you don't have to put like your salary or how many hours you worked a week, for instance. But on a lot of federal jobs, you have to include that information, and you not including that information can make you disqualified. So make sure you're doing that. And then after you make sure everything's on there, you have everything, then you want to submit your application. And then you'll be typically directed to, you'll have to do an assessment. And that assessment typically comes from something called USA Hire, or you'll have have a subject matter expert review panel, and you don't have to do anything else. That's where a group of professional subject matter experts will look over your application to determine whether you can get referred to the hiring manager. Another quick tip that I'd like to give you that I wish I knew, because I spent years applying for federal government jobs and sometimes got referred, sometimes didn't. Make sure on USA Jobs, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's something called upcoming, it has events, and different agencies have information sessions. They have webinars on how to write a federal resume. They have information on how to utilize USA Jobs. So make sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And just to add to what you're saying, Crystal, I'll be the first person to say that after getting out of the military for 25 years, I thought my resume was top notch. And to me, it was. However, I didn't necessarily know the algorithms of USA Jobs and what was looked at for these positions until I actually went and used the resume writer. And I have to thank Milo for that, because if it wasn't for Milo, I wouldn't be with the BLM right now. So that's I'm just gonna say that. So big shout out to Milo. So it's key. It is key to make sure that you're putting 40 hours a week in your resume. It's key to put your latest pay grade and all the rest of your pay grades. There are specific information that if you're not hitting in your resume, you will automatically not be considered for the position, even though you could be. So please pay attention. That's all I had to say.
Awesome. Appreciate that, guys. So Crystal hit on this a little bit earlier. There's all sorts of different hiring paths that you can actually qualify for. I won't go into a deep dive with all of them, but you've typically seen open to the public, open to federal employees, open to students, open to military spouses, open to veterans. There's all these different hiring authorities, and each job, as we post them on USA Jobs, we're going to actually have to include what hiring authorities that the hiring managers want to take a look at. Something to take into consideration is that the federal government has certain metrics that they want to fill with regards to, for example, individuals with disabilities or veterans or military spouses. They have metrics that they want to be able to fill positions with those specific individuals. This can get confusing sometimes. So really there's two ways I want you to go about navigating this. Number one, if you have questions on federal hiring paths and if you qualify, feel free to reach out to any one of us, whether it's Steve, whether it's Crystal, whether it's myself. Hit us up on LinkedIn, hit us up on email, and just, or call us and just ask the question like, hey, this is what I think I qualify for. Can I apply? The other thing I would say is that when you find a job on USA Jobs that you're interested in, scroll down to the bottom and it's got a how to apply section. That how to apply section is going to have usually either an organizational inbox listed or it's going to have an individual email listed. Don't be afraid to click on that email and send that email to say, hey, here's the job announcement I qualified for. I think I qualify under this special hiring authority, but I want to make sure that I do. Can you please review it and get back to me at your earliest convenience? Those hiring managers or those HR professionals, they're going to look at that and they're going to reach back out to you and let you know. And by all means, utilize the three of us to answer any of that.
So your federal resume, again, I fell victim to thinking that my resume was as good as it could be. However, again, there are some tips and tricks. Even if you look up on YouTube, again, please feel free to utilize any of us as a resource to look over your resume or just to get some tips and tricks. So tailor your resume. The number one thing that you'll see is when you apply for the position, once you've built your profile on USA Jobs and you start looking at positions, you'll start looking through the job announcement itself, and you'll notice the different qualifications for each GS level. You have to scour everything, and you have to match up what your information is up to the minimum requirements that are in these job announcements. And please do not leave the information up to interpretation, because you have human resource specialists that are sitting there looking over 50 or 60 people and having to look over here and then look over here and match up. So if you can pinpoint blank, just highlight exactly what is necessary on your resume per the actual hiring path that you want to take, it helps the HRSs out tremendously. So elaborate, just like it says, provide complete and well-rounded information about your knowledge and skills and abilities. Because if you are applying for a physical position that is, say, a GS 11, and say right now you're currently a GS 10, if you don't necessarily provide the complete information that shows that you can do the work at a 10, because you have to be within a 12-month requirement to make it to the next promotion, it's not going to be considered. So again, I cannot foot stomp again hard enough to just go ahead and make sure you know what you need to have on your resume and include that either in your resume or make sure your DD-214 has exactly what it needs. Make sure your SF-50s are up to date. It's just as important. So and again, we're all here to try to help you guys get hired in any capacity as long as you're qualified.
So who's ready for a new adventure? You can scan that QR code there. That can take you directly to the USA Jobs website. You can select it by, like someone had asked in the chat about remote jobs, you can select remote jobs only. You could select, like if you're interested in a biologist, you can select by keywords. Something else really cool about USA Jobs and setting up your account, you can have daily reminders, weekly reminders to come directly to your email, so you're notified right when a job opens. One thing about federal jobs is they're typically open around 10 days. That's not a lot of time to have to prepare your resume, making sure it's tailored for each job. So I would highly recommend on USA Jobs, when you create your account, to set up automatic reminders if you want to get emailed daily, weekly, monthly, however you want to get notified, to make sure you're setting that up.
Okay, so I think we'll transition now to some of the Q&A, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure I just kept this up, and I wanted to say thank you. Thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you for posting some of these really awesome questions we get to answer, but here's our contact information. And again, I handle Idaho and Arizona, Crystal handles Alaska, and Steve handles Eastern states and California. But please take into consideration that if there's a state out there that you're interested in, they may have a recruiter. They may have a human resources specialist who is actually functioning as a recruiter. So don't be afraid to reach out to one of us and let us kind of help you facilitate that conversation with the state that you're interested in. So with all of that being said, Werner, I'll pass the baton back over to you, sir.
Oh, thanks, Milo, and thanks, Steve and Crystal. This is an amazing presentation. I mean, we always are just amazed about the information that we never knew about the BLM and the clarification. So we absolutely appreciate you all here today. Yeah, we've seen a few in the Q&A, and I had a list of questions that were brought up before then as well. But one of the things that I think we can touch on, being that we do have such a large military population here at the university, is does BLM offer skill bridge for active duty military?
Absolutely. So SkillBridge is actually handled at our headquarters. But what I always suggest, if you go to the BLM website and you go to the SkillBridge link, it's pretty generic, the information that's given. So what I always suggest is reach out to one of us, reach out to one of the recruiters. Let us kind of walk you through the process of what type of transcripts might be needed, what type of forms might be needed to kind of help facilitate that next look from those hiring managers. Let us kind of bundle that package up for you, and then let us send it from our government emails to the headquarters liaison who handles SkillBridge. And then that will allow her to say, okay, this individual's already been kind of vetted by the recruiters. If I'm getting this, there's actually a little bit more heat underneath it. So absolutely.
Also, I know it's been brought up of several times, and you probably can see them there in the Q&A. But as far as positions go, do you often get potential for remote opportunities, or is it always going to be physical within the state that you work, or do you travel to other states to perform the roles that you have?
I think it's a mixture. We definitely do have remote opportunities, and you can literally, in the USA Jobs portal, you can type in BLM, Bureau of Land Management, then you can go over to the next tab and put remote jobs only, and it will show you all our jobs that are remote. We also have in our agency, we have telework. So we're able to some days work from home, some days work in the office. And we do have some people do travel. I know in Alaska, we have the fire services program. So sometimes those people, and someone had asked about seasonal jobs. yes, we're currently hiring for the fire services program. You can do that seasonally. But yes, there are where they go to California or help with fires in other places. So some jobs, biologists, some ecologists do travel around to different states and things like that.
You all addressed this earlier in your presentation about being competitive. I was thinking the same thing. I see an anonymous person who sent in a question about, and I'm curious about this as well. What is the best way to be a competitive candidate for a BLM role?
You know,
So
go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a lot of that is going to depend on the positions that you're applying for, right? So if you don't have a background in petroleum engineering, but you're continuing to apply for positions as a petroleum engineer, then you're not going to be, overly competitive. If you're applying for a role, like for example, we have these roles that are called realty specialists or land law examiners, right? And these roles, they don't require like anything specific, because we're on the outside. Are you going to get a bunch of on-the-job training on how to be a land law examiner? So there are certain roles that they kind of leave open to interpretation for that hiring manager to review transcripts, to review jobs history, and to kind of make a determination of, hey, you know what, this person might not have this, and this, but they have this, and this, which we think might be able to morph into that, and that. So to be competitive, again, reach out to Steve, Crystal, myself, and the other recruiters that are out there, but let us help kind of answer those questions on, I've got a friend of mine I'll use as an example. He doesn't have an associate degree. He's got a great work ethic, but he just doesn't have some of those other things that some of these positions are hiring for. And he said, hey man, I'm applying for this GS14 project manager role. I know I can do it. And of course I'm like, well, dude, I know you can do it too. You're a great guy. You're phenomenal. But you don't really meet the requirements and qualifications listed on this job announcement. So you can apply, and I'm not going to tell you not to, but I would strongly suggest maybe taking a step back, maybe looking at some of these GS 7, 8, 9 project manager roles, and potentially using that as a way to kind of get their foot in the door to then potentially transition into something else, which somebody put in the Q&A. There's always movement available. So I hope that answers that, Werner.
And another cool thing to just piggyback on what Miles said, in the federal government, a lot of jobs have career ladders. For instance, you can start off as a GS5 and it have a promotion potential to a GS11. And so typically in the federal government, most of our jobs go 5, 7, they skip the odd numbers. There are some odd number GS levels, but typically they go 5, 7, 9, 11. So within 5, 7, 9, 11, within 3 years, you can be from like 50,000 to a GS11, 80 something $1,000 a year. So we do have career ladder. So look at that when you're applying for a job. Something else that very important, when you're applying for a job and it asks what's the lowest grade you're willing to accept. If you say, no, I don't want to accept that lower grade and pick the higher grade, well, if they don't feel that you qualify for that, you won't even make it to the interview realm. So make sure you can put that lower grade in so you qualify. And then that's something you can negotiate once you actually are given that offer.
That's great advice, Crystal. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people never even thought of that. And that's what I love about these sessions when we have them is we have just fantastic people like all of yourselves that present information that people want to know the background. How can I be a competitive candidate? All these things feed into that. And we just so appreciate the fact that you're just very, upfront about everything. And that's just wonderful. So I see a lot of other questions in here, but one of the questions that was brought up, because we're always looking for younger folks, as you mentioned, but is there like a maximum age, or does the BLM take people that might have, years of experience and might be older?
Steve,
definitely. As long as there's no age limit, there's no discriminatory based upon your age. Now, there are some jobs I know up in Alaska, our fire person had to retire because he was getting up in age. For some jobs you do, like if you're air traffic controller, there are some jobs that require a certain age, but typically, sometimes they'll in the government, jobs are created for you to roll into. You'll apply for other jobs. So things like that. There are jobs that do have an age cap. But as far as I'm too old for just applying for a job, no. But some jobs do have that, depending on the type of job it is, the technicalities of it.
Understood. And just to kind of
And,
answer,
yeah,
go ahead.
just
Go
a
ahead, Sam.
caveat. Just to
Yeah.
caveat what you're saying, Crystal.
Sure.
It'll show in the announcement if there is an age requirement. It'll say
Okay.
minimum or maximum requirement for said fire position or air traffic control position. So yeah, I would just highly recommend making sure that you take the time to go ahead and read those minimum requirements, because there's a difference between eligibility and qualification. And a lot of people don't know that. But as long as you're reading the actual job announcement thoroughly, you will see what you need to qualify for, and then you will see what you need to be eligible. So
Great point. And I appreciate you sharing
So
that.
and your eligibility is going to be like your hiring path. Like, are you a
right.
new graduate? Are you a veteran? Are you a military
Absolutely.
spouse? And your qualification is going to be your education and your experience.
Yep.
Sure. That's really, really good. You answered a lot of some of the questions that I had here. But for those who, let's say, a couple of things actually, here's another question that we have. How easy is it to cross over to another maybe business area once you are in the BLM? Have you all experienced that, or do you know people in the BLM that have done that over the years?
So yeah, that has been done, but again, you have to have the qualifications
Understood.
to transfer over into a position.
Absolutely.
So and that can be done by, however long you've worked there and you've worked some different project manager positions or so on and so forth, however you can get affiliated in those positions. But yes, it has happened.
And
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback. Something that's extremely popular in the federal government is something called work details. So you can do a work detail to different positions, and that's how people can get that experience. Like say, okay, I'm interested in doing a project management job, right? And there comes a position open internally to people within the bureau. Well, I can apply to do a 120-day work detail. That way, I'm still keeping my job. I'm getting that experience. I can actually put that on my resume. So that's what a lot of people do in the federal government to get experience in other areas or work details.
That's fantastic. Never knew that. That's awesome.
I'll use a quick
Great.
testimonial. We had an individual, a veteran, who was our administrative assistant in our human resources office, and she functioned in that role for about 6 months. And she said, Milo, I like it. I don't think it's my ultimate calling in life, but it's good for now. She would go over to our realty office and she would do ride-alongs with the realty specialist to take a look at public lands, and our land law examiners to take a look at some of the lands that were under consideration for different like energy projects or like filming. Like for example, if Hollywood wants to film on public land, like our land law examiners go out there and do these filming contracts. So you can, like Crystal and Steve were saying, you can go and you can get some hands-on experience to see, what, I think I'd really like to go over there and start working on some stuff internally to make yourself more competitive.
I love that. I heard that, Crystal, this is probably more up your alley, but from the OPM side of the house, that people get to do that when they go into those programs too, and they get to go work with different organizations, different departments, and learn all about them. So I love hearing that, Milo. That's awesome. That's just fantastic. So a couple quick questions here, because I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. So I know there was a lot of military people here. They're asking questions about the GS roles and what have you. But does having some of that experience help them in obtaining a higher GS level roles in addition to their degree at UAGC, or is it strictly have to follow the process of the GS level process that's typically there?
Yeah, it's going to go back to those eligibility and qualifications. So first of all, are they eligible for that job? Do they have that veterans preference to even apply and be qualified? And then it's going to go on their qualifications, their experience. So you need to make sure that you are putting that in your resume. If you've done this, managed this many people, or, done these reports or whatever, make sure you're putting that in there so that they can get you in at that higher level and you've proved, that you have that experience.
So Couple quick questions about all three of you, actually. So why do you like working at the BLM, and what brought you to this federal government agency, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it really just went back to the heritage of the West. Like I grew up in a farming, ranching community. I grew up, riding horses. I grew up just really loving the outdoors. And I knew that when I transitioned from the Air Force, I wanted to serve a purpose that the Air Force gave me, supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. I wanted to support something bigger than myself. And for me, that was National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Reclamation, because I believe in those missions. And I think that when you believe in something, it's just so much easier to give your complete passion to.
Absolutely, Milo. How about for you, Crystal?
For me, some of those same things. I grew up primarily in Alaska and just, seeing the land. I mean, in Alaska, being able, growing up with a lot of Alaska natives and how they value the land and just wanting to preserve that land for generations to come. But my number one thing is, I think that you said in my bio, is that I just have a passion with connecting people to opportunity. And I had been doing that, with students at colleges and in the district system, and just giving people opportunities to help change the trajectory of their lives is something that I have a passion for. And being in this role where I can tell people little tips and tricks that I stumbled with, it took me a while to get here, a federal role, but that I can tell younger like students like today, the path to go is just something that I have a passion for and really drew me to this position.
Thank you, Crystal. Steve, how about you?
I wanted to continue serving. I wanted to continue serving an organization that I felt was definitely worthwhile. After I learned exactly what the Bureau of Land Management did for the United States, I mean, because I'll be honest with you, coming from Michigan, coming from Detroit, I was a little unaware. And then after reading over the mission and the vision and seeing all of the different areas that the Bureau of Land Management covered within the United States, it was very intriguing. And then they were building an Eastern States area for a team. And I was thankfully, I was lucky enough to get on the team here and really kind of start a different mission over here to start establishing a presence. And if it wasn't for Crystal and if it wasn't for Milo, just the wealth of knowledge that they also pour into me from the Bureau of Land Management, and I could be somewhere else, but I'm thankful for being here.
I can tell you this, the questions are rolling in left and right. So the students and graduates are totally engaged here. So I'm going to ask you two more quick questions if we could squeeze them into the top of the hour. The first one is, are there any entry-level roles, or do you see entry-level roles that people do apply to when they pop out of college and they would like to apply?
All the time. Our internship program, I know in our office, we have 2 students who are human resource assistants that were recent grads, but all the time. And then I see somebody had something about they have a master's in management with no background in the service.
Yeah,
I don't have, my father was a veteran, but I had no background in military service. Just making sure your resume is hitting on those points that they're asking for is what you need, and that you're eligible to apply for that job. So maybe for you, for that person, it's like open to the public would be your qualification to make sure.
I'm going to ask
For
one
your
last
eligibility.
question. There's so many questions here. I'll ask it, and I appreciate all of you being here. And then we'll definitely get back to those questions that were not answered today. We apologize we didn't have enough time to answer all of them. But I think one of the other ones here that I think is very important is, what if a candidate is interested in applying to multiple areas? Are there any downsides to applying to multiple positions that where they have they're qualified fit for the positions?
Absolutely. No, I would highly encourage anyone to apply for any position that they qualify for, because nothing is promised. We all have to remember that we are in constant competition with the person that is next to us. And the more irons you have in the fire, the more viable you are to getting hired somewhere else. And if you say you're qualified for 5 positions and then you prioritize them and say you get the 5th one, well, that doesn't mean that your number one priority position isn't going to come open later on. And once your foot is in the door, you can network and you can talk and make friends with people. You just got to get your foot in the door and prove yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just recently, at the Alaska office, we had a guy who applied for 4 positions and he was the top on all 4. So he got to pick and choose, and they were different GS levels. So he was waiting to hear back from each one of them to see which one was going to be the highest pay. So absolutely, if you're qualified, apply for them. Don't let it stop you from applying. Just making sure your resume is tailored for each one of those.
Great points. Thank you so much. We're getting to the top of the hour here. I really appreciate all of you, Milo, Steve, and Crystal, for that informative presentation. It was such a wonderful presentation, and we learned so much. So we already answered some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and point out that if you want to connect with the Bureau of Land Management and other organizations that are actively hiring for full-time positions and internships, please log into Handshake through your student portal. We recommend checking Handshake and UAGC Connect regularly for career services events. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording and information about careers at the BLM. If you have any questions for the career services team on your resume, cover letter, or job search, please email careerservices@uagc.edu or log into Handshake through your student portal to explore more resources. Many thanks again to Milo, Steve, and Crystal from the Bureau of Land Management for joining us today. And many thanks to you, our students and graduates, for attending UAGC. Please take 1 minute to hang on at the close of this information session. You will be directed to complete a quick confidential survey. Your resume, or your responses will guide us in planning future employer information sessions, career fairs, and events. If you're unable to complete it now, the survey will also be emailed to you with a copy of the recording. Thank you for attending this event today, and we look forward to seeing you at more career services hosted events. Everybody have a great day. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.